Well, the iPhone has always been sort of the standard bearer for the industry. It's always been sort of the best, and I think it still remains the best in terms of usability, in terms of sort of luxury as a status symbol, as sort of the best smartphone that money can buy, and it remains to be that. So as long as somebody's looking for that particular product, the iPhone is going to be the easy answer.
Well, Brian, I don't know if you saw Jim Cramer's interview with Tim Cook last night on Mad Money, but Tim Cook said loud and clear, our ecosystem is as strong as ever. Do you agree with that statement? And is that really the key when it comes to the iPhone?
Well, it's certainly an interesting choice of words to use, and I think that it is the right word to use in this case. It is absolutely about the ecosystem for Apple now. As we've seen, that 10% cut forecasted means that the demand is slowing down for the handsets themselves. Pretty much everybody in sort of certainly wealthier markets like the US who want an iPhone have already bought them. That's why we're starting to see sales fall off in more sort of volatile markets like China. So now he has to turn to that ecosystem. Things like the Message app, which is beloved and one of the things that keeps people coming back. You know, of course, the App Store and the way that it curates apps is going to be more of a focus, the whole services package for Apple going forward.
So, Brian, it's interesting. We were just sort of chit-chatting about the early skepticism when the iPhone was released, whether it was your BlackBerry keyboard. I mean, people did not think this was going to be the hit that it was. And I would draw it to today because Apple is no stranger to the so-called naysayers, which Cook talked about with Cramer last night, and the doubters and those that have said, you know, Apple doesn't have a new trick, doesn't have the next big thing. Talk a little bit about that in relation to the book you wrote and what they're facing right now.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, just in that clip you played when the first iPhone was announced, just listen to the crowd react to that. There was skepticism roundly sort of in the market whether or not this totally untested smartphone product could even become a category, much less a hit. But you heard that crowd of early adopters, Apple fans, just erupt with pure joy. I can't remember the last time we've heard a reaction like that. So the answer is yes. Apple's fans and its stockholders are eager for Apple to produce something that is just as wow-inducing as that first iPhone was, which, you know, may really be folly because how often, I mean, once a generation, maybe you get a product like that. Apple managed to do that on the heels of the iPod and then followed up with the iPad. So of course, there's this sort of expectation that Apple is going to continually reinvent its wheel, continually sort of surprise us. But I think, you know, personally, that Apple has entered into sort of the next phase of its development, the next phase of its growth, where, you know, we should get used to maybe not being as excited by Apple and look to ways that we are just merely sort of satisfied or getting the best absolute product for our money from it.
Brian, just to round things off, is there any kind of tip you'd have for the leadership there of something that they could be doing that they're not yet doing, some low-hanging fruit perhaps?
Well, I think there's a number of things they could do to better integrate the beloved services that they have. I mean, there's two things that they can do to look to growth areas, I think. One is that Apple has just never really succeeded in rolling out a lower cost phone for a market segment that doesn't want to shell out $1,000 or $800 or even $700. So they can look to that as a potential growth area, or they can double down on their services. They can look and say, hey, everybody loves the Message app. How do we get this on Google phones? How do we monetize that? There are a number of ways that Apple can still sort of supercharge its growth just using the resources and talents that it has on hand.